Hello guys, it's me Simo Orahara, and in this video we'll talk about episode 16, which adapted 3 chapters from chapter 552 to chapter 554 and 2 pages of chapter 559 and a lot of extra scenes. So this episode shows that the anime at some point may move away from the manga, and all the events of the anime will follow a completely different order of events. So guys, this episode begins with skirmishes between Shinigami and some Quincy soldiers, where we have seen this legendary appearance of Iba, while he was fighting one of the soldiers with some difficulty, using his Zanpakuto in its sealed form. And I hope that Kobo may make a fight for Iba where we can see the name of his Shikai and its abilities, and maybe his Bankai. And you know why? Because it's not logical that Iba, one of the oldest vice captains in the Gotei 13, and yet we haven't seen a proper fight of him. But in general, I liked how the studio portrayed the atmosphere of the battles from various angles, especially these scenes. There was a creative touch from the director of this episode. I like it so much. On the other hand, we saw how Toshiro was not the only one who was defeated, but his vice captain was also defeated by Tanchu. And I think Kangdo is a Chinese name, but it seems that in the anime they pronounce it in Japanese Tsanchu. Anyway, Tsanchu has come to Toshiro's whereabouts on Hashvald's previous instructions from Yuhawa, that the Stern Knighter must fight those who stole their Bankai. So Tsanchu was looking for Toshiro, and on his way, he found Matsumoto and defeated her and turned to Toshiro, who was still on the ground after being defeated by Busby. And one of the things that I liked about the meeting of Kangdo or Tsanchu and Toshiro is this scene. Tsanchu standing using Toshiro's Bankai. It wasn't a normal scene for Toshiro, because Toshiro has a Bankai that materializes on his body with 2 icy wings. So he cannot see his Bankai but only fights with it. And as Tsanchu said, it appears that this is the first time that Toshiro has seen his Bankai from that angle. And another thing that Tsanchu confirmed is the case that the Bankai remains alive even after the death of its owner. It's true that we have seen confirmation of this by Dreiscol, who used Sasakibe's Bankai after his death, but with Tsanchu's words, I wonder what will happen to Yamamoto's Bankai, because he's still in the hands of Yuhawa. However, with the coming of Urahara, the course of the events changed by discovering a way for the Shinigami to retrieve their stolen Bankai. Urahara's brief stay in the Wikomondo enabled him to learn several secrets, such as some Quincy techniques like the offensive and defensive bloot, and also how to retrieve the stolen Bankai of the captains. And this was done through several analyses made by Urahara, the most important of which is that he asked a logical question. If the Quincy's were able to steal the Bankai of the Shinigami, so why didn't they steal the Arankara's resurrection? Especially since the resurrection form can be considered like the Bankai of the Arankara. So why didn't Quincy steal the Arankara's Bankai, so to speak? Someone might say that the Quincy's may have seen that the Arankara resurrections was not that thing, so that they would steal it and use it. But this is not correct, because when the Quincy's came to Wikomondo, they enslaved the Arankara and made them their soldiers and imprisoned Halibut. So if they had the ability to steal the resurrection of the Arankara, they would have done so. For this, Urahara spoke about the fact that the Quincy's have a weak immunity against hollows. The hollow power is like a poison for them. And speaking about this idea, Urahara had an experience with this. In the flashback of Isshin, when Masaki was bitten by White, she was going to her death, or what is called the suicide of soul. And this is the real problem for the Quincy's. It's not like the normal humans or the Shinigami. For example, if a Shinigami was bitten by a hollow, that Shinigami might be subjected to a holification and become a hollow. And this is what some Shinigami are exposed to, such as Kain Shiba. And some of them manage to control that power of the hollow and become a visor. But for the Quincy's, this is not the case. That's why Kisuke's utmost to save Masaki was to insert the Shinigami power of Isshin as barrier between Masaki's power and the Hollow White power. And there is something else that Urahara Kisuke seems to have relied on in finding the solution. And I think something he didn't want to tell Mayuri. And it is the medal of Kilgi. He relied on to ensure that the power of the Hollow prevents the Quincy's from stealing the Bankai, because Kilgi Oppi tried once to steal Ichigo's Bankai, but he couldn't, and before that Ivan tried to do so, and it didn't work either. However, this time Orohara Kisuke saw the fight in front of him. He knows Ichigo's power and how it works, because he was responsible for saving his mother. He is the one who awakened his Shinigami powers for the first time. So there is no doubt that he knew that the power of the hollow in Ichigo's body was the main factor in the Quincy's inability to steal Ichigo's Bankai. In other words, Ichigo's Bankai was a hollow fate Bankai. And based on this idea, Orohara Kisuke created pills that would make all of the stolen Bankai mixed with a fraction of Hollow's power, which would make those Bankai a hollow fate Bankai. And this is what happened. As soon as the hollow power leaked into the stolen Bankai, all these Bankai have returned to their owners. And that's why when Toshiro retrieved his Bankai, the hollow effect was evident on his form. And from what I can see, it seems that some Sternreiter are really a bunch of losers. Immediately after they lost the Bankai, they were defeated like Tanto and BG9. And moving to Hirako's release of the Bankai, I have already said that the Bankai would be released on a group on foot soldiers and no one else. Because this is the Bankai level. The Bankai is very weak and full of holes. It cannot be released in a mixed area, and it's not effective against strong enemies. Literally, is it only suitable for such enemies? As for the scenes of Ikako and Yumichika with Hisage, the first scenes are from chapter 559. I don't know what the studio is trying to do, but it seems that there might be some fights between the vice captains and masculine, because in the manga there are only 2 pages on the subject of masculine and the vice captains. Is it possible to say, for example, that we may see Yumichika's Bankai? Everything is possible. Anyway, the issue of restoring the stolen Bankai to Shinigami was an expected move from Yuaba. For that, immediately after this, he made the Sternreiter released their own Volt Standing. Thus, it can be said that the real battles will start from this moment. And we move to the last scenes of the episode. Ichigo's terrain continues. But the end of the road is still far away. The closer Ichigo gets to the entrance, the farther he finds himself. It's Erazo Sando, the endless road. However, this time Ichigo actually seemed to be moving towards the end, or let's say he seemed to be the actual candidate to be the vassal. As soon as he entered a certain area of the road, an energy coming from the entrance engulfed him and made him see a glimpse of the past. And I think this is a big sign that shows Ichigo as the chosen vassal. Because I do think that Ryu would only send those memories to the chosen one. But the interesting thing here is why exactly these kind of memories. In it we see the King of Swords in his full body and carrying his sword, as well as 3 people surrounding him who seems to be responsible for catching him. I can't talk about that scene in detail because there's a lot to talk about and it's all spoilers. That's why I will talk about it by God willing in the next video. So guys, tell me what you think about this episode, especially about Hirako's Bankai and Ichigo scenes, and see you guys in my next video.